No one dared to respond to the millionaire until a 7-year-old poor little girl silenced him with a single word, leaving him pale. But something even more shocking is yet to come. Before the story begins, wherever you are on your journey, consider this as encouragement to keep going. If this resonates with you, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more inspiration. The tension in the Anderson Technologies boardroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. William "Bill" Anderson, CEO and founder of the billion-dollar tech empire, stood at the head of the gleaming mahogany table, his custom Italian suit a statement of power as much as fashion. 20 executive board members hung on his every word as he detailed the company's landmark acquisition. Ladies and gentlemen, this merger will position us as the unchallenged leader in medical technology for the next decade, Bill declared, his voice carrying the confident authority that had made him famous in business circles across America. The room erupted in applause. At 52, Bill Anderson had everything: wealth, power, respect, and a beautiful wife waiting in their Manhattan penthouse. His story was the American dream personified, from a small-town boy to a self-made billionaire. That's when the boardroom door swung open. Security would later review the footage. An elderly woman with a visitor's badge had created a distraction at reception while the child slipped past. Dorothy Williams had worked as a hospital administrator for 40 years before arthritis forced retirement. She knew institutional buildings and their weaknesses. A small figure stood in the doorway, a little girl no more than 7 years old, wearing a faded blue dress and scuffed shoes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes, deep brown and unnervingly familiar, scanned the room until they locked onto Bill's face. The room fell silent. Bill's executive assistant moved toward the child, saying, "Sweetheart, you can't be in here." "I need to talk to Mr. Anderson," the girl said firmly, her voice small but unwavering. Bill, more annoyed than concerned, sighed. "Young lady, we're in the middle of an important meeting. If you're selling Girl Scout cookies, my assistant can help you outside." Several executives chuckled, but the girl didn't move. Instead, she walked straight toward Bill, her worn backpack clutched tightly against her chest. "My name is Ella Johnson," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My mom's name was Rachel Johnson." The name hit Bill like a physical blow. His face drained of color, and those closest to him would later recall how his hand trembled against the table. "She died 3 months ago," Ella continued, her voice steady despite the grief evident in her eyes. "Before she died, she told me about you. She said you're my father." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one spoke. 20 pairs of eyes shifted from the small, determined child to their now visibly shaken CEO. That's impossible," Bill finally managed, but the words lacked conviction. Ella reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn photograph. "She kept this picture of you two together, and she wrote you letters, lots of them. Mrs. Garcia at the post office helped her make copies before she sent them." The mention of another witness, someone who had helped Rachel document her attempts at contact, made Bill's stomach tighten. Security was already moving toward her, but Bill raised his hand, stopping them. Something about the child's eyes, his mother's eyes, made it impossible to dismiss her outright. "How did you get in here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dorothy helped me. She was Mom's friend from the cancer support group. She's waiting downstairs." Ella stepped closer, unafraid. "Mom said you wouldn't want to see me, but she made me promise to find you before—" Her voice finally cracked. "Before they take me away." "Take you away?" Bill's CFO asked, breaking the tense silence. "What does that mean?" "The lady from Child Services," Ella explained, her composure slipping momentarily. "She came yesterday. She said since Aunt Margie moved to Florida and can't take me, and Dorothy's too old, I have to go to foster care on Monday. Mom said you were my last chance." The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Bill Anderson, the man known for his unshakable composure and quick decisions, stood frozen, staring at a ghost from his past in the form of a 7-year-old girl. "Mr. Anderson," his CFO finally ventured, "should we reschedule?" It was the photograph in the child's hand that did it. Even from where he stood, Bill could make out Rachel's smile, that same smile that had captivated him 8 years ago, before his first million, before the fame and the carefully constructed public image. "Everyone out," Bill ordered, his voice returning. "Now, please." As the room cleared, Bill found himself alone with the daughter he never knew he had, or perhaps, he realized with growing dread, the daughter he had chosen to forget. Outside the boardroom, whispers already raced through the company. Sarah Kim from legal texted her roommate, "OMG, some kid just showed up claiming to be the boss's secret daughter." Bow, and just like that, the carefully constructed wall between Bill Anderson's private past and public present began to crumble. Dorothy Williams clutched her worn leather purse on her lap, perched nervously in the imposing lobby of Anderson Technologies. At 72, she'd never imagined she'd be sitting in one of Manhattan's most prestigious buildings, surrounded by glass, steel, and people rushing by in expensive suits. But then, she'd never imagined she'd be responsible for a 7-year-old orphan either. "Mrs. Williams?" A security guard approached, his expression stern. "I need to speak with you about how you and the child gained access to this building." Dorothy squared her shoulders. "Young man, I spent 40 years as head administrator at Queen's Memorial. I've faced down doctors who thought they were God. You don't scare me." Upstairs, little Ella was facing the father who had never known her. Dorothy prayed she'd done the right thing. The social worker, Ms. Patel, had been clear. Without a blood relative willing to take custody, Ella would enter the foster system on Monday morning. 3 months earlier, Dorothy had been nothing more than Rachel Johnson's fellow cancer support group member. She'd watched Ella grow from afar, often babysitting when Rachel had chemotherapy appointments. Rachel had built a small but tight community. Dorothy, Margie, Rachel's cousin, who had recently moved to Florida for a job opportunity, Pastor Jim from the community church, and the Garcia family who owned the bodega downstairs from their apartment. But none were in a position to take permanent custody of a child. "I need to tell you something, Dorothy," Rachel had whispered one night from her hospice bed, Ella asleep in the chair beside her. "Ella's father isn't dead like I told everyone." Dorothy's arthritic fingers tightened around Rachel's hand. "Who is he, dear?" "William Anderson. The tech guy. He's on magazines sometimes." Rachel's eyes had glistened with unshed tears. "We were together before he got rich. When I told him I was pregnant, he said it wasn't the right time, that he had plans." Dorothy remembered gasping. Everyone in America knew Bill Anderson's face. "Does he know about Ella?" "I wrote him letters for years. He never answered." Rachel's voice had grown urgent. "Promise me you'll take her to him when I'm gone. She has nobody else, and they'll put her in the system." Now, 3 months after Rachel's passing, Dorothy had kept her promise. Getting into the building had been the hard part, but Dorothy had lived through the Great Depression. She knew a thing or two about determination. A faked phone call about delivering documents, a convenient visitor badge, and a timed distraction at the reception desk had allowed Ella to slip toward the elevators. Upstairs, in the now-empty boardroom, Bill Anderson paced while Ella sat calmly in one of the executive chairs, her feet dangling well above the floor. The room felt too large, too quiet. "This is complicated," Bill finally said, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "You understand that I can't just take your word for this. There are procedures, tests." "Mom said you'd say that," Ella interrupted, her voice small but steady. "She said you'd want a DNA test. She also said you have a birthmark shaped like Florida on your shoulder." Bill's pacing stopped abruptly. The birthmark was not public knowledge. No one except his wife Margaret, and those who had known him intimately would know about it. Rachel had known. "Your mum," he started carefully. "She was a waitress." Ella nodded. "At Joe's diner. But she went back to school too. She was studying to be a nurse when she got sick. She almost finished, but then the cancer came back." The details aligned with the Rachel he'd known: ambitious, hard-working. They'd met when he was just starting his company, working 18-hour days and eating most meals at the diner where she served. She was putting herself through community college, dreaming of a healthcare career. Their relationship had been brief but intense, until his first investor had come through, and suddenly his trajectory had changed. "These letters you mentioned," Bill said, forcing himself to sound calmer than he felt. "Do you have them?" Ella nodded and pulled a bundle tied with faded blue ribbon from her backpack. "She wrote you one every month for a while, then just on my birthdays." She hesitated. "I can read, you know. I read them." Bill took the bundle, his fingers trembling slightly. The top envelope was addressed in handwriting he hadn't seen in years, but instantly recognized, postmarked 7 years ago, around the time Ella would have been born. "Mr. Anderson?" His assistant Bobby appeared at the door, concern etched on his face. "There's an elderly woman downstairs being questioned by security. She says she's with the child." "That's Dorothy," Ella explained. "She promised Mom she'd take care of me, but she can't really. Her hands hurt a lot, and we don't have much money since Mom died. Mrs. Garcia from the bodega gives us leftover bread sometimes." The casual mention of poverty, of relying on charity for basic needs, hit Bill with unexpected force. Bobby's eyes widened in recognition at the situation, quickly averting his gaze from his boss. "Bring her up," Bill instructed, his voice hollow. "And Bobby?" Not a word of this to anyone, not yet. As Bobby left, Bill turned back to Ella, really looking at her for the first time. The eyes that had initially struck him were indeed achingly familiar. They were his mother's eyes, the same eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, the shape of her face, the determined set of her chin. How had he not seen it instantly? "I have a wife," he said suddenly. "Margaret. We've been married for 5 years." "Does she have kids?" Ella asked. "No," Bill replied, a familiar ache resurfacing. "We can't have children." Ella considered this, then stated matter-of-factly, "Then maybe she'd like me." Before Bill could respond, the door opened again. Dorothy Williams stepped in, looking both terrified and defiant as she rushed to Ella's side. "I'm sorry to barge in like this, Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice quavering slightly, "but Rachel made me promise. Ms. Patel from Child Services has the paperwork ready for Monday morning, and we had nowhere else to turn." Margaret Anderson's charity luncheon was interrupted by a text message that made her nearly drop her champagne flute. "Need you home. Urgent. Family matter. Bill." In 15 years together, 5 as husband and wife, Bill had never left work midday, let alone summoned her home from an event. As her driver navigated Manhattan traffic toward their Central Park penthouse, Margaret's mind raced through possibilities: a health crisis, a financial disaster, a scandal. She never imagined walking into her immaculate living room to find her husband sitting across from a little girl and an elderly woman. "Margaret," Bill said, rising from the sofa with an expression she'd never seen before, something between guilt and shock. "This is Ella Johnson and Dorothy Williams." And Margaret's social training took over as she extended her hand automatically. "Pleased to meet you both. I'm sorry, Bill, I don't understand." "Ella is Rachel Johnson's daughter," Bill interrupted. The name meant nothing to Margaret, and her confusion must have shown. "Rachel was someone I knew before we met 8 years ago." Ooh, the elderly woman, Dorothy, placed a protective hand on the child's shoulder. "Rachel passed 3 months ago, Mrs. Anderson. Cancer." Margaret nodded sympathetically, still not understanding why these strangers were in her home, until the little girl spoke. "He's my dad," Ella said simply, looking directly at Margaret with eyes that suddenly, horrifyingly, reminded her of her mother-in-law's family portraits. The world tilted momentarily beneath Margaret's designer heels. She looked at Bill, waiting for him to deny it, to explain the misunderstanding. Instead, he nodded almost imperceptibly. "We don't know that for certain," he added quickly, "but there will be a test, to be sure." Margaret sank into the nearest chair, her charity luncheon speech about supporting underprivileged children suddenly taking on a bitter irony. For 5 years, they had tried everything to have a child of their own. Fertility treatments, specialists, even discussing surrogacy and adoption. All while this child, this possible Anderson heir, had been living across the city in poverty. "Where are you staying?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Dorothy answered, "Our apartment in Queens, but we're behind on rent since Rachel's hospital bills, and Child Services is scheduled to place Ella in foster care on Monday morning. The social worker, Ms. Patel, has already done a home visit." The mention of an official social worker made this suddenly more real. This wasn't just a claim, there were already government systems in motion. "You'll stay here tonight," Margaret interrupted, ignoring Bill's startled expression. "We have plenty of room, and this is a lot to process, for everyone." Later, after showing their unexpected guests to the guest suite, Margaret cornered Bill in their bedroom. "Tell me everything," she demanded, arms crossed. "Now." Bill poured himself a bourbon before speaking. "Rachel was a waitress at a diner I used to frequent when the company was just starting. We dated for a few months. It wasn't serious, or at least I didn't think it was." "And you never knew about the child?" Bill's hesitation told Margaret everything. "She wrote to you," Margaret realized, her voice dropping. "Didn't she?" "I was raising capital, working 20-hour days. When the first investor came through, everything changed overnight. Rachel and I, we wanted different things." "That doesn't answer my question, Bill." He stared into his glass. "There were letters. I never opened them. My assistant at the time, before Bobby, was instructed to file certain personal correspondences. I assumed she was just having trouble moving on." The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken accusations and fears. "She has your mother's eyes," Margaret finally said. Bill nodded, his face ashen. "I know. What will you do if she's yours?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but the press would have a field day if this got out. Tech billionaire abandons child while preaching family values. Our stock would plummet." Margaret looked at her husband with new eyes. "Is that really your first concern, the stock price?" Before Bill could answer, there was a soft knock at their bedroom door. Ella stood in the hallway, looking small in the vast penthouse. "Dorothy fell asleep," she explained. "But I can't sleep. Your house is too quiet. Our apartment has sirens and people yelling all night, and Mrs. Garcia's cats sometimes visit through the fire escape." The simple details of her former life, sirens, neighbors, visiting cats, painted a vivid picture so different from the sterile luxury of the penthouse. Margaret felt something shift inside her, a protective instinct she'd longed to feel for a child of her own. "Would you like some hot chocolate?" she offered, extending her hand. As Ella took it, Margaret glanced back at Bill, still frozen with his drink. "The stock price," she said quietly, "should be the least of your worries right now." In the kitchen, as Margaret warmed milk for Coco, Ella studied the refrigerator photos. Bill and Margaret on vacation in Bali, at charity galas, on their yacht. "My mum kept your pictures too," Ella said. "The ones from magazines. Mrs. Garcia helped her cut them out. Mum said it was important I know what you looked like, for when I met you someday." Margaret's hand stilled on the saucepan. "Did your mum talk about Bill a lot?" Ella shook her head. "Not until she got sick. Then she told me everything. She said she never stopped loving him, even when he didn't want us." The simple brutality of a child's honesty left Margaret speechless. In her world of Manhattan elite, emotions were carefully managed, resentments expressed through subtle social maneuvers. This straightforward pain was unfamiliar territory. My mom wasn't mad at him, Ella continued, accepting the mug of cocoa. She said he had important things to do, and we would have just gotten in the way. Margaret watched the little girl blow carefully on her hot chocolate, her face a miniature mirror of determination and vulnerability. Whether or not the DNA test confirmed Bill's paternity, Margaret realized their lives had already changed irrevocably. Robert "Bobby" Taylor had been Bill Anderson's executive assistant for 6 years, a position that made him privy to the great man's triumphs and failures, strengths and weaknesses. He'd managed crises before: corporate espionage, a product recall, even the tabloid photos of Bill with that actress in Cannes before his marriage to Margaret. But walking into the office the morning after the boardroom incident, Bobby sensed this crisis was different. Bill sat at his desk unshaven, still wearing yesterday's shirt, staring at a stack of unopened envelopes tied with blue ribbon. "The DNA testing people will be here at 10, Bobby reported, placing coffee on the desk. "I've rescheduled your meetings for the week, citing a family emergency." Bill looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "How much do you know about Rachel Johnson?" The question startled Bobby. "Just what's in the file, sir. She wrote regularly for several years. The letters were filed according to protocol." "Protocol," Bill repeated hollowly. "My protocol for ignoring problems until they went away." Bobby had worked for enough powerful men to know when to remain silent, but he'd also grown to respect Bill beyond the typical employee-employer relationship. "If I may speak freely, sir," Bill gestured for him to continue. 4 years ago, on your instruction, I began reviewing all correspondence before filing. One letter contained a photograph of the child Ella on her 3rd birthday. There was a cake with 3 candles, and she was wearing a party hat. Bill's head snapped up. "You knew all this time?" "I placed the photo on your desk with the morning briefing. You glanced at it, then told me to handle it and file it away with the others." Bobby paused. "Since then, I've sent a gift card anonymously to the return address every Christmas and birthday. I hope that wasn't overstepping." The revelation hit Bill like a physical blow. He had seen his daughter's face before and simply dismissed it. What kind of man had he become? "How much?" Bill asked after a long silence. "Sir?" "And the gift cards. How much did you send?" Bobby hesitated. $100 each time, sir. From my personal account." Bill closed his eyes. $600 total, birthday and Christmas for 4 years. A pittance to him, but perhaps significant to Rachel and Ella. And Bobby, whose salary, while generous, certainly didn't leave room for such expenditures, had done it without hesitation. "I'll reimburse you, of course," Bill said. "That's not necessary, sir." "It is." Bill opened his eyes, facing his assistant directly. "And Bobby, thank you." A knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas Bennett from legal entered, his expression grave. "We have a situation," he announced without preamble. "Social media's buzzing with rumors about yesterday's boardroom incident. Someone on the executive floor talked." Bill cursed under his breath. "How bad?" Thomas handed over his tablet. On the screen was a tweet from a junior executive. "Strange day at work. Little girl crashed the big boss's meeting, claiming to be his kid. Secret love, tech drama, billionaire baby." No names, but enough detail to start the rumor mill churning. "The board is concerned," Thomas continued. "They're calling for an emergency meeting tomorrow. And Ms. Patel from Child Protective Services called. She heard the rumors and wants to speak with you immediately regarding Ella Johnson." The mention of child services made Bill's stomach clench. "What does she want?" "To understand your intentions, I imagine. The child was scheduled to enter foster care on Monday. If you're claiming paternity, there's a legal process to follow. Background checks, home studies, court appearances. It could take months. Months? Bill repeated incredulously. She could be in foster care for months while we sort this out. Thomas nodded grimly. Unless we find an interim solution. A relative willing to take temporary custody, perhaps. There isn't one, Bill replied. Just an elderly neighbor with arthritis and a cousin in Florida who apparently can't help. Then you need to decide quickly, Thomas advised. The DNA results will take at least 24 hours. Ms. Patel won't wait indefinitely, especially with the media attention building. After Thomas left, Bill turned to Bobby. Call Margaret. Tell her to expect Miss Patel for dinner tonight. Then get me Pastor Jim from Community Church in Queens. Dorothy mentioned him as part of Rachel's support network. I want character references ready. Bobby nodded, already dialing. And sir, the board meeting tomorrow? Bill squared his shoulders, decision made. Tell them I'll be there, with lawyers. That afternoon, Bill did something unprecedented in his career as CEO. He left the office early, heading not home, but to Queens. The address on Rachel's letters led him to a run-down apartment building with peeling paint and a broken intercom. The bodega on the ground floor had a faded sign, Garcia's Grocery. Inside, a heavy-set woman looked up from the counter. Can I help you? I'm looking for information about Rachel Johnson, Bill said, feeling strangely exposed in his designer suit amid the modest surroundings. And her daughter, Ella. The woman's eyes narrowed with sudden recognition. You're him, aren't you? The father. Bill nodded, bracing for hostility. Instead, Mrs. Garcia's face softened. Rachel was a good girl. Worked so hard for that baby. Even when she got sick, she kept going. Night classes, double shifts. Never complained. She reached beneath the counter and produced a small photo album. Here. Rachel asked me to keep this, in case Ella ever wanted to know about her early years. As Bill accepted the album, a record of the childhood he had missed, he felt the weight of a responsibility he could no longer avoid. The media storm hit faster than even Bobby had predicted. By morning, reporters had gathered outside Anderson Technologies headquarters, and Billionaire Baby was trending nationwide. Someone had leaked Ella's first name and Dorothy's connection, turning the elderly woman's Queens apartment building into a circus of journalists offering cash for interviews. Inside the penthouse sanctuary, Bill read the headline on his tablet. Tech Titan's Secret. Child claims Anderson paternity. We need to get ahead of this, Thomas Bennett, head of legal, advised during an emergency conference call. Issue a statement acknowledging the claim, stating that you're cooperating fully and requesting privacy during this sensitive family matter. Family matter. The phrase stuck in Bill's mind as he ended the call. Was that what this was now? In the guest bedroom, Margaret sat on the edge of Ella's bed, helping the child understand what was happening. There are people who write stories about famous people like Bill, she explained gently. They're very interested in you right now, but we won't let them bother you. Ella nodded solemnly. Mom said this might happen. She said people like stories about rich people's secrets. The child's matter-of-fact acceptance of the situation, her mother had prepared her even for this, reinforced Bill's growing recognition of Rachel's strength and foresight. Ms. Patel from Child Protective Services arrived promptly at 10, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with a weathered briefcase and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She interviewed Bill and Margaret separately, then spent an hour with Ella alone. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, she began when they reconvened in the living room, I appreciate your cooperation during this difficult situation. Ella appears well-adjusted despite recent trauma, and she speaks highly of both of you. Bill felt Margaret's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. However, Ms. Patel continued, I must emphasize that custody determinations aren't made overnight. Even with a positive DNA result, there's a process, Background checks, home studies, court hearings. Typically, a child would remain in foster care during this process. That's unacceptable, Bill interrupted. She's just lost her mother. She can't lose everything familiar now. Miss Patel's expression remained impassive. I understand your concern, Mr. Anderson. There is an alternative, temporary kinship placement. Since you're claiming paternity and given the unusual circumstances, I could recommend that Ella remain with you while the process unfolds. But there would be conditions. Name them, Bill said immediately. Supervised visits, continued therapy for Ella with our approved counselor, parenting classes for both of you, and regular check-ins with my office. She fixed them with a stern gaze. And absolute cooperation with the court. No attempting to expedite the process through financial influence or political connections. Bill bristled at the implication, but nodded agreement. When will we know your decision? I'll prepare my recommendation today. Judge Harrison will review it tomorrow morning. Miss Patel gathered her notes. One more thing, Dorothy Williams. She's been Ella's primary caregiver since Rachel's passing. I strongly advise maintaining that connection. After she left, Bill retreated to his office, emotionally exhausted. The DNA results wouldn't be ready until tomorrow, but he already knew what they would show. He had spent the night reading Rachel's letters, 8 years of updates, hopes, disappointments, and finally, forgiveness. The most recent letter, written from her hospice bed, contained no recriminations, only a mother's plea for her daughter's future. I never wanted your money, Rachel had written in fragile script. But Ella deserves to know her father, and perhaps you're finally ready to know your daughter. I forgive you, Bill. I hope someday you'll forgive yourself. Margaret had slept in the guest room, keeping vigil with Ella, as if afraid the child might disappear. When Bill emerged from his study after Ms. Patel's departure, he found his wife in the kitchen, teaching Ella how to make French toast. The reporters found Dorothy's apartment, he announced. It's not safe for her to go back there. Margaret nodded, unsurprised. I've already spoken to her. She'll stay with her sister in New Jersey until things calm down. I've arranged a car. Bill watched as his wife efficiently managed this crisis, the same calm competence she brought to their shared life. Margaret had always been his perfect partner, complementing his vision with her practicality. They had been a power couple, Manhattan royalty. Now he wondered if their childless state had been a blessing in disguise. What kind of father would he have been when he could so easily dismiss a child's existence? Mr. Anderson? Dorothy approached, her few belongings packed in a worn suitcase. Before I go, there's something else you should know. Bill braced himself for another revelation. Rachel never cashed those gift cards your assistant sent, the elderly woman said quietly. She kept them in a box. She said they meant you hadn't completely forgotten, even if you couldn't face the truth. She was saving them for Ella's college fund. The simple dignity in Rachel's response to his pathetic, delegated gesture of support made Bill's chest tighten with shame. I'll drive you to your sister's, he decided suddenly. Myself. Now. Margaret looked up in surprise. Bill, there are reporters everywhere. Good, he said firmly. Let them see me taking responsibility. It's about time someone did. The formal dining room of the Anderson penthouse had hosted senators, CEOs, and once, briefly, a European prince. Tonight, it held a more intimate gathering. Bill, Margaret, Ella, and Thomas Bennett, family attorney extraordinaire who had arrived with a stack of documents and a carefully neutral expression. The DNA results are conclusive, Thomas said, sliding a paper across the table. 99.9997% probability of paternity. Though expected, the confirmation hit Bill with surprising force. There was a difference between suspecting and knowing, between possibility and irrefutable fact. Judge Harrison has reviewed Ms. Patel's recommendation, Thomas continued. She's approved temporary placement with you while the formal custody process proceeds. There will be supervised visits twice weekly, mandatory parenting classes, and a full home study in 30 days. How long until permanent custody? Margaret asked. Thomas's expression was carefully measured. 3 to 6 months, assuming everything goes smoothly. Family court moves at its own pace, even for billionaires. Ella sat quietly, legs swinging beneath the table, attention divided between the adult conversation and the elaborate dessert Margaret had served. Chocolate mousse in crystal dishes that had been a wedding gift from Margaret's grandmother. "What about school?" Margaret asked, ever practical. "Her current school year has been disrupted already." "I can arrange private tutors until fall," Thomas suggested. "Then perhaps Westfield Academy? They've accepted Anderson Foundation donations for years." Bill watched Ella carefully scrape her dessert dish, using the same methodical approach he applied to complex problems. "Ella, what do you think about all this? About staying here with us?" The child looked up, her face serious. "Dorothy can't take care of me. Her hands hurt too much for cooking, and her apartment is too small. And Mom said—" Her voice wavered slightly. "Mom said you were my father, and that's where I belong. Do you want to stay with us?" Margaret clarified gently. Ella considered the question with surprising thoughtfulness for a 7-year-old. "I miss my mom, and our apartment, and Mrs. Garcia's cats, and Pastor Jim's stories." Her voice caught slightly. "But I like it here too. You have books, and you make good French toast." The simple, honest assessment brought an unexpected smile to Margaret's face. "We can get more books, and make French toast every day if you want." Thomas cleared his throat. "There's the matter of the press. We've issued the statement, but they'll want more. Photos, interviews. I recommend a controlled release, one exclusive interview with a friendly outlet, professional family photos, the full Anderson charm offensive." DeBill felt a flare of irritation. "She's not a product launch, Thomas." "No," the attorney agreed, "but public perception matters, especially with the Westfield merger still pending. The board is nervous about how this affects the company's reputation." "The board can—" Bill began hotly. "Bill," Margaret interrupted, with a meaningful glance toward Ella, "maybe we should discuss these details later." After Thomas departed with instructions to finalize the temporary custody arrangements, Bill found himself standing awkwardly in the doorway of the guest room that would become Ella's bedroom. Margaret was helping the child get ready for bed, a domestic scene he had never imagined in their precise, orderly lives. "We'll redecorate however you like," Margaret was saying. "What's your favorite color?" "Green," Ella answered promptly, "like the trees in Central Park." "Green it is, then. And we'll need to get you some new clothes, books, toys." "I have clothes," Ella protested, "and toys at Dorothy's, and my special things at Mrs. Garcia's." "Of course," Margaret backtracked smoothly. "We'll get your things from Dorothy's and Mrs. Garcia's tomorrow." Bill watched his wife navigate the conversation with natural grace, envying her easy rapport with the child. When Margaret rose to turn down the lights, he stepped forward awkwardly. "Good night, Ella." The little girl looked at him solemnly. "Are you my dad now, for real?" The question pierced through his carefully constructed defenses. "Yes," he said softly. "For real. I'm your dad." Ella nodded, accepting this new reality with a child's adaptability. "That's good. Mum would be happy." After she fell asleep, Bill found Margaret on their bedroom balcony, staring out at the city lights. "You're good with her," he said, joining her at the railing. "It's not hard." "She's an extraordinary child, Bill. Smart, resilient, kind, despite everything she's been through." Margaret turned to face him. "She's exactly the daughter we would have chosen if we'd had the choice." The irony wasn't lost on Bill. After years of fertility treatments and disappointments, the child they had longed for had been living just miles away, unknown and unacknowledged. "I don't deserve this second chance," he admitted, "or your forgiveness." "This isn't about what you deserve," Margaret replied calmly. "It's about what Ella deserves. And she deserves a father who will put her first, something you haven't done for the past 7 years. The brutal honesty was characteristic of their relationship. It was one of the things Bill had always valued about Margaret, her refusal to coddle his ego. "I don't know how to be a father," he confessed. "My own was hardly a role model." "Neither of us had perfect parents," Margaret reminded him. "We'll figure it out together, day by day." Together. The word hung between them, a question as much as a statement. "Are we okay?" Bill asked finally. "You and me?" Margaret didn't answer immediately, weighing her words with characteristic care. "I'm hurt that you kept such a significant secret, even if you convinced yourself it wasn't real. I'm angry that you let Rachel face everything alone. And I'm sad for the years we lost with Ella." She turned to face him fully. "But I also know that we have a chance to make this right, not just for Ella, but for ourselves. The family we wanted is suddenly here, just not in the way we expected. And you're willing to accept her just like that. It's not just like that, Bill. It's a choice I'm making, the same choice you need to make. To see this not as a PR crisis or a disruption to our perfect life, but as the gift it is." From inside the apartment came a soft cry. Margaret was moving before Bill could react, instinctively responding to Ella's distress. He followed, finding them in the guest room where Ella sat up in bed, tears streaming down her face. "I dreamed about Mom," she hiccuped. "She was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her." Margaret sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Ella's hair. "That happens sometimes when we miss people. Our minds try to keep them with us through dreams." "She'd be happy you're here," Ella said, looking at Bill hovering in the doorway. "She always said you'd be a good dad if you got the chance." The faith that Rachel had maintained in him, had instilled in their daughter, despite his abandonment, was a gift he hadn't earned, but desperately needed. "I'm going to try," he promised, moving to sit on Ella's other side. "I can't replace your mom, but I'm here now. We both are." Bree, as Ella drifted back to sleep between them, Bill caught Margaret's gaze over the child's head. In his wife's eyes, he saw not just forgiveness, but a new purpose, a shared commitment to the daughter who had found them against all odds. Outside, reporters still camped on the sidewalk. The board still fretted about stock prices, and tomorrow would bring new challenges in family court. But in this quiet moment, something fundamental had shifted. The careful, controlled life Bill Anderson had constructed was giving way to something messier, more unpredictable, and infinitely more valuable. He had spent 8 years building a technology empire. Now it was time to build something far more important, a family. 1 month after the custody hearing, Bill sat in Ella's newly decorated bedroom, transformed from guest room to a child's paradise in mint green with built-in bookshelves overlooking Central Park. The supervised visits with Ms. Patel had finally ended, with the social worker declaring herself satisfied with their progress. And then Ms. "Philip said my math is advanced," Ella reported about her tutor. "She's giving me 5th grade problems, even though I'm only in 2nd. "That's wonderful," Bill replied, genuinely proud, yet still awkward in his role. "You get that from both sides. Your mother was always good with numbers. Mum said you would stay up all night working on computer stuff, and she would study while you worked. She said you were both dreamers." The observation hit Bill with unexpected force. They had been dreamers, 2 ambitious people with big plans, until his dreams had taken precedence, and he'd convinced himself hers didn't matter. "Your mother was right about a lot of things," Bill said carefully. "I wish I'd listened to her more." Ella considered this, head tilted analytically. "Do you listen to Margaret?" "I try to. She's much smarter than me about some things." "Like what?" "Like people, feelings. What really matters." Ella nodded. "She took me shopping yesterday. I've never had so many clothes before. Mum always got my stuff from thrift stores. Bill winced at the reminder of the financial disparity. "Do you like your new things?" "They're nice, but I miss my old school. Will the kids at my new school know about me? About how I found you?" "Some might. But you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." Mum said sometimes people would ask questions. She said I didn't do anything wrong, so I shouldn't feel bad about how I came to be. While he had been building his empire, Rachel had been building their daughter's resilience. "Your mom was right," Bill said firmly. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." Later, after Ella was asleep, Bill found Margaret in their office, reviewing applications for the Anderson Foundation's annual grants. "She asked about visiting Dorothy this weekend," Bill said. "I said yes." Margaret nodded. "Good. Dorothy is her connection to Rachel and her old life. We need to nurture that, not replace it." Bill sank into a chair. "How are you doing with all this? Really?" Margaret's smile was tired but genuine. "It's an adjustment. But Ella is extraordinary. I keep waiting to feel like she's an intrusion, but instead, she feels like a gift, the daughter we couldn't have." "I don't deserve either of you," Bill admitted. "Probably not," Margaret agreed frankly, "but here we are anyway. The question is, what will you do with this second chance? Be a better man than I was. The man Rachel believed I could be. The father Ella deserves." "And the husband?" Margaret asked softly. Bill reached for her hand. "That too." "If you'll let me." Their moment was interrupted by a soft knock. Ella stood in the doorway in green pajamas, looking small and uncertain. "I had the dream again, about Mom trying to tell me something." Without hesitation, Margaret opened her arms and Ella came to her. Bill watched as his wife, who had never expected to mother another woman's child, held his daughter with natural grace. In that moment, the three of them formed a new constellation. Not the family any of them had imagined, but perhaps the one they all needed. The visit to Dorothy's sister's home in New Jersey revealed another side of Ella, more relaxed, more childlike. Away from the penthouse's intimidating perfection, she blossomed in the cluttered warmth of suburbia, helping Dorothy make chocolate chip cookies while Bill and Margaret sat awkwardly on a floral sofa. "She's adjusting well," Dorothy observed, watching Ella play in the backyard. "Rachel would be pleased." "We're trying," Margaret said. "She's an amazing child." Dorothy nodded. "Rachel did a wonderful job with her, reading to her every night, taking her to the library when they couldn't afford books." "I've been meaning to ask," Bill said. "Rachel's medical bills, were they all settled?" Dorothy's expression tightened. "The hospital forgave some, but there's still about 30,000 owing." "I'll take care of it," Bill said immediately. "And I'd like to set up a trust for you too, Dorothy." The elderly woman shook her head. "I don't need your money, Mr. Anderson." "It's not charity," Margaret interjected smoothly. "It's family." As they prepared to leave, Ella gathered her things, including a small wooden box Dorothy handed her with quiet significance. "Mom's memory box," Ella explained as they settled into the car. "Dorothy kept it for when I was ready." Back at the penthouse, they gathered around as Ella carefully lifted the lid to reveal Rachel's treasures. A nurse's pin from her unfinished studies, jewelry, and more letters, these addressed to Ella. "She wrote me letters too, for when I'm older, for my birthdays and graduation and my wedding someday." Margaret blinked rapidly, fighting tears. What a beautiful gift. Inside a small velvet pouch was a silver locket containing photos of Rachel and Bill. "She always wanted me to have both of you with me," Ella whispered. "Can I wear it?" "Of course you can," Bill said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's more valuable than anything in our safe." Later, Margaret showed Ella their wedding album. "That's Uncle Robert," she said, pointing to Bill's estranged brother. "You haven't met him yet. He lives in California." "Does he know about me?" Ella asked. The The question highlighted another complication. His extended family still didn't know about Ella. Not yet, Bill admitted. But they will soon. Maybe we should visit them in California. Could we go to Disneyland too? Ella asked with a child's enthusiasm. Mom always said we'd go someday. Yes, Bill said. We'll go to Disneyland and then visit Uncle Robert and Grandpa. That night, Bill called his brother. Robert answered on the fourth ring, surprise evident in his voice. Billy, is everything okay? Dad's fine. This is about something else, something I should have told you a long time ago. As Bill explained about Ella, the line went quiet. When Robert finally spoke, his voice was measured. You know what Mom would say about this, don't you? Bill closed his eyes. Their mother had been the family's moral compass. That I've been given a chance to be better than Dad was. To break the cycle. Exactly, Robert replied. Bring her out here. We want to meet her. Dad too, believe it or not. He's been different since the stroke. More reflective. As Bill ended the call, he felt something shift, a reconnection to the family he'd left behind in his pursuit of success. Ella wasn't just finding her father, she was helping him find his way back to himself. The Anderson family's private jet touched down in Los Angeles on a perfect California morning. Ella pressed her face against the window, eyes wide with excitement. She had never flown before, certainly not on a luxury aircraft with her name embroidered on a special pillow, a surprise Margaret had arranged. Are we really staying near Cinderella's castle? Ella asked as they descended the airstairs. The hotel is inside Disneyland, Margaret explained. We can see the castle from our windows. Bill followed, carrying their minimal luggage. He was struck by how different Margaret seemed away from New York. More relaxed, her perfect composure softened into something warmer. Their first day at Disneyland unfolded like a dream for Ella, and a revelation for Bill. He had visited before for business, but never experienced it through a child's eyes. Ella's wonder at the simplest things, character meet and greets, parades, shaped ice cream, was contagious. By evening, Bill found himself wearing Mickey ears, carrying souvenirs, and genuinely enjoying himself more than he had in years. As they watched the fireworks, Ella perched on his shoulders. He caught Margaret's eye. Thank you, he mouthed silently. She smiled, understanding. This trip had been her idea, not just Disneyland, but the family reunion to follow. Their hotel suite overlooked the illuminated castle. As they settled Ella for bed, surrounded by new stuffed Disney characters, Bill noticed her fingering Rachel's locket. Did you have fun today? He asked. Ella nodded, her expression suddenly serious. I wish Mom could have seen it. Margaret sat beside them. Your mom is seeing it through you. And tomorrow, when we ride the teacups again, we'll think of her specially, okay? Ella considered this, then nodded. She would have liked you, she told Margaret. She always said I should be brave and kind like her. You're like that too. The next morning, they drove to the assisted living facility in Malibu, where William Anderson Sr. resided. At 82, the former aerospace executive had survived 2 strokes, but retained his sharp mind and sharper tongue. Ella, dressed in her Disney dress with her locket prominently displayed, held tightly to Bill's hand as they were escorted to the Ocean View suite. Robert met them at the door, embracing his brother with genuine warmth despite their years of distance. Catherine had flown in from Seattle, bringing her teenage twins, who immediately took interest in their new young cousin. But it was William Sr.'s reaction that surprised everyone. The old man studied Ella with intense focus as she was introduced. Come here, child, he commanded. Let me look at you. No, Ella approached without hesitation, standing before him with the same direct gaze she'd used when confronting Bill in the boardroom. You have Marianne's eyes, the old man said, referring to his late wife. And her backbone, too, I'd wager. To everyone's astonishment, he reached out a gnarled hand to touch Ella's face. "Your grandmother would have adored you." He looked up at Bill, his expression softening fractionally. "You did one thing right, at least." Coming from William Anderson Sr., it was as close to approval as anyone ever got. Ella's first day at Westfield Academy arrived with the crisp promise of fall. The prestigious private school had welcomed the Andersons' daughter with carefully concealed excitement. Having a billionaire's child enrolled was good for both reputation and endowment funds. "What if nobody likes me?" Ella asked, as their driver navigated Manhattan traffic. She wore the school's uniform, plaid skirt, navy blazer, and looked simultaneously younger and older than her 7 years. "They'll like you because you're you," Margaret assured her. At the school gates, they encountered what they'd been dreading: paparazzi. Despite legal warnings, a few photographers always managed to appear. 5 months after Ella's dramatic entrance into their lives, the story still held public fascination. "Ignore them," Bill instructed, keeping his arm around Ella. Westfield's headmistress greeted them personally, escorting Ella to her classroom while Bill and Margaret completed paperwork. When it came time to leave, Bill found himself unexpectedly emotional. "She'll be fine," Margaret assured him. "This is a good thing, Bill. Normal routine, children her age, academic challenges." Bill nodded, though his mind raced ahead to potential problems: children asking invasive questions, teachers treating Ella differently, the relentless public interest. "Sir?" Bobby's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Ms. Chen from Legal is on the line. It's about the Johnson apartment." Bill took the call. When he ended it, Margaret was watching with concern. "What is it?" "Rachel's landlord finally agreed to sell us her old apartment," Bill explained. "We're closing next week." Since learning about Ella, Bill had been quietly buying the things that connected her to Rachel: the apartment where they had lived, the diner where Rachel had worked, even the hospice where she had died. Each property came with a plan. The apartment would be maintained as a memorial, the diner renovated with scholarships for employees pursuing healthcare education, the hospice expanded with a new wing for single parents facing terminal illness. "Does Ella know?" Margaret asked. "Not yet. I wanted to be sure it would happen first." Margaret's expression softened. "You're doing a good thing, Bill, preserving her past while building her future." When they returned to the penthouse that afternoon, Ella burst through the door in excitement. "I made 2 friends," she announced. "Zoe and Maya. They want me to join their science club, and Mr. Philip says I can take the advanced math test next week." Bill listened to her chatter, relief washing over him. Despite everything, the unusual circumstances, the public scrutiny, the trauma of losing her mother, Ella was thriving. That evening, after Ella was asleep, Bill showed Margaret the plans for Rachel's former apartment. "I thought we could take Ella there this weekend, let her collect anything special she wants to keep." Margaret studied the plans, then looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You've changed," she said finally. "Is that good or bad?" Bill asked. "Good, definitely good. 6 months ago, you would have thrown money at this problem and delegated the emotional work. Now you're thinking about what Ella needs, not just financially, but emotionally." "We have something to discuss," Margaret said, changing the subject. "Dr. Weiss called today with my test results." Bill tensed, immediately concerned. Margaret had been undergoing fertility treatments for years, but they had stopped trying after Ella came into their lives. "I'm pregnant, Bill. 8 weeks." The news hit him like a physical blow, not unwelcome, but utterly unexpected. "Dr. Weiss says everything looks good. Strong heartbeat." Bill pulled her into his arms, his mind racing. Another child, a sibling for Ella, a baby that would grow up knowing its half-sister had paved the way for its very existence. "How do we tell Ella?" he asked. "With honesty and love," Margaret said confidently. "She's been asking for a brother or sister since Disneyland." The Anderson Technologies Charity Gala had always been Manhattan's most exclusive event. This year, Bill had almost cancelled it, concerned about subjecting Ella to public scrutiny. But Margaret, now showing slightly at 4 months pregnant, had convinced him otherwise. "We can't hide forever," she'd reasoned. So here they were, Bill in a custom tuxedo, Margaret radiant in midnight blue, and Ella in a green dress that matched her eyes, Rachel's locket visible at her throat. "Remember," Bill told her as their car approached the red carpet, "you don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to." Ella nodded solemnly. At 8 now, her birthday had been last month, she carried herself with remarkable poise. "I know, Dad. We practiced." Dad. The word still gave Bill pause. They had progressed from Mr. Anderson to Bill to Dad over the past 8 months, each transition marking a new level of trust. The cameras flashed when they emerged. Inside the grand ballroom, decorated to showcase the Anderson Foundation's new focus on educational access and medical support for single-parent families, the elite of New York society waited. Many had followed the Ella Johnson story with interest. Some had even placed bets on how long the arrangement would last. None had expected what they now witnessed, not just acceptance, but genuine family bonds. For 2 hours they circulated among guests, accepting well wishes for both Ella's integration and the impending new arrival. Bill observed with pride how naturally Margaret included Ella in conversations, how the child handled adult attention with grace. "She's a natural," Thomas Bennett commented, appearing at Bill's elbow with champagne. "You'd never know she grew up in Queens." Bill bristled at the implied snobbery. She did grow up in Queens, with a mother who taught her values that money can't buy. As the evening progressed, Bill took the stage for his annual address. Tonight, however, he deviated from the script his PR team had crafted. "Many of you know that this has been a year of unexpected changes for my family," he began. 8 months ago, a brave little girl walked into my office and changed everything. Not just my life, but my understanding of what truly matters. The room fell silent, 200 of New York's most powerful people hanging on his words. "I've built a company valued at billions, but I nearly missed the most valuable gift of all, the chance to know my daughter." Bill found Ella's eyes in the crowd. "Ella, would you join me up here?" Murmurs rippled through the audience as the child made her way to the stage. Bill lifted her to stand beside him, her small hand in his. "Tonight, I'm announcing a shift in our mission. The Rachel Johnson Initiative will provide comprehensive support for single parents facing catastrophic illness, medical care, childcare, housing, educational opportunities, and legal assistance." The announcement was met with applause, but Bill wasn't finished. Rachel Johnson did something far more impressive than building a company. She raised an extraordinary daughter, alone, while facing terminal cancer. She did it with grace, courage, and love that I can only aspire to match. Tears glistened in Ella's eyes as she looked up at her father. Bill knelt to her level, momentarily forgetting the crowd. "Your mother was the real hero of this story," he told her, "and this foundation will honor her legacy." The only reaction that mattered was Ella's tight hug and whispered, "Mom would be so proud." The baby's cry echoed through the penthouse at 3 a.m., pulling Bill from exhausted sleep. Beside him, Margaret stirred but didn't wake. "I've got him," Bill murmured, though she was already asleep again. In the nursery, Bill lifted his son from the bassinet. The tiny boy, red-faced and indignant, quieted somewhat at his father's touch. "Shh," Bill soothed, offering a bottle. "Let's not wake everyone, buddy." As the baby settled into feeding, Bill sank into the rocking chair, marveling at how natural this felt now. A year ago, he would have been paralyzed by such intimacy, such responsibility. Now it was simply part of who he was, a father, twice over. "Dad?" Ella's voice came from the doorway. At 8.5, she stood tall in her NASA pajamas, hair mussed from sleep. "Is Mikey okay?" "Just hungry," Bill assured her. "You should be asleep. It's a school night." Ella padded into the room anyway, curling into the window seat beside the rocking chair. "I don't mind. I like watching you with him. I like watching." In the dim light, father and daughter shared a comfortable silence, broken only by the baby's soft sounds. "It's been a year," Bill said softly. "Since you found me." Ella nodded. 13 months and 6 days, she corrected with characteristic precision. "I was keeping track. Are you happy, Ella? With us? With everything?" "I'm happy," Ella confirmed. "Sometimes I still miss Mom, though, especially when I see you and Margaret with Mikey. Mom would have been a good grandma." "She would have been amazing," he agreed, "and she'd be so proud of you." "I know I am." Ella smiled thoughtfully. "Do you know why I decided to find you after Mom died?" Bill shook his head. "I found all her letters to you, the ones she never mailed." Ella's voice was matter-of-fact. "In one of them, she wrote that she never told you about me because she was afraid. Not that you wouldn't want me, but that you'd take me away from her, that you'd have better lawyers, more money." The revelation stunned Bill. The idea that Rachel had actually feared him using his power against her was a painful insight. But then, in her last letter, the one she never sent, she wrote that she was wrong, that she should have given you a chance to be my father. Ella looked directly at him now. "That's why I came to find you. Because Mom said she was wrong and that you deserve to know me. Thank you for telling me that." In his arms, baby Michael had fallen asleep. Bill set the bottle aside, carefully shifting the infant to his shoulder. "Your mother had nothing to be sorry for," he said firmly. "I'm the one who should have tried harder." Ella considered this. "Maybe you both made mistakes, but it worked out okay in the end, didn't it? We found each other." The simple assessment, forgiving both parents their human failings, reflected wisdom beyond her years. "Yes," Bill agreed, "we found each other." As if sensing the emotional moment, Michael chose that instant to burp loudly, bringing a giggle from Ella. "He's so gross sometimes," she observed with sibling fascination. "But I like being his big sister." "And you're a great one," Bill assured her. "Now back to bed. We both have big days tomorrow." Tomorrow was the grand opening of the Rachel Johnson Memorial Wing at Queen's General Hospital. Ella would cut the ribbon alongside Bill and Margaret, a family united in honoring the woman whose absence had paradoxically brought them together. As Bill settled Michael back in his bassinet, then walked Ella to her room, he reflected on the journey of the past year. From the shock of Ella's appearance to the joy of Michael's birth, from the rekindling of his relationship with his own family to the profound shift in his priorities, every step had been unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. Margaret had awakened when he returned to bed. "Everything okay?" she murmured. "Perfect," he replied, meaning it completely for perhaps the first time in his life. "She changed us," Margaret observed sleepily. "That little girl from Queens." "For the better," Bill agreed, holding his wife close.